Amen. Pastor Pawlowski, I know in Canada, things are a little bit more, how can I say it, liberal than they are in certain parts here in America. What are your thoughts about when you hear pastors like this that openly endorse and affirm sin and say it's okay to live lifestyles that we clearly know the Bible speaks against?
Well, the Bible is very clear. Nothing is new under the sun. What it was, it will be again. And if you know history, and that's what I teach history. You look at the Roman Empire, where sex was normal, sex with children, women, girls, boys, you name it, was there were sexual prostitutes in the temples. And you've got Babylonians and Persians. And of course, Pastor William talked about Sodom and Gomorrah. And over there, everything was a go. You look at the Ottoman Empire just a couple hundred years ago, where it was normal, even though Quran prohibits homosexuality, it was a norm to have boys for those people, little boys to have sex with. And nothing is new under the sun. We're dealing with a fallen human nature. Here is First Corinthians 7:2. But because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. Of course, there are a number of other verses about the purity of marriage bed, that we are not allowed to uh, do adultery and go out there and sleep left and right. Marriage is a covenant and it's holy. God ordained marriage to be holy. If you go outside of God's ordained way of things, you're sinning. Anything you do outside of God's instructions, you are sinning, and not just sinning, you're going against your own blessing, if you will. When you accept sin, when you accept rebellion towards what God or how God ordained, you're bringing a curse upon yourself. And look at Canada. You mentioned Canada. Canada has went crazy for the past 40, 50 years. The church slowly started to accept, in the name of law, which love, which is not actually love, it's lust. So in the name of lust, they started to accept certain behaviors that historically were condemned. In other words, some people started to come out of the closets and things started to become more and more normal. So, for example, divorce started to become more and more normal. When you start to go to that rabbit hole, you will never come out of it. And that's exactly what is happening to Canada. It's a progressive, a distraction of moral standards, what we're witnessing right now. So decades later, homosexuality was made legal. Then the marriage between two men and two women has become legal since 2005. Now adoption of children has become, by those individuals, legal. And look at us now. And I think that point is very important for people to understand, that sin never stops. When you allow one sin to come your way, he has many brothers and sisters. It's not coming alone. He will invite his cousins. He will invite his, uncles and aunts, and soon you will be taken over by sin. So right now, what we have in Canada, homosexuality is endorsed publicly and is elevated. You've got politicians marching with sodomites. You've got banks advertising homosexual behavior. Everywhere you go, you see rainbow flags, the six-color flag, advocating for homosexual behavior. But look what is happening to our youth. Canada right now has the biggest number of suicides ever recorded in the history of this country. I don't know if you're aware of that. Yesterday's article says that Canadian doctors cannot keep up with the amounts of people that are murdering themselves, killing themselves. That's the crazy part. Also, what is happening because of the decline of the moral standards, in other words, everything is a goal, right? God is love. They treat him like Jesus from 70s, smoking pot, peace brother, love. That's not the Jesus of the Bible. So when you go outside of the Bible, you are bringing a curse upon yourself, upon your family, and upon the nation. Right now, we have the biggest amount of fentanyl overdoses ever recorded in the history of this country. We have moved into a culture of death because when you allow sin to creep in, soon he's going to take over an entire society. And that's exactly what is happening here. We got about 1 million people marching everywhere every year in Toronto. Toronto is a capital of Ontario, province of Ontario, with politicians, prime ministers there, cabinet ministers, all kinds of people, media, of course, police officers, and they are naked people marching through the streets. And I mean naked,
You mean
completely
naked?
naked,
Naked people.
completely naked. Not only they are marching in that sodomite parade, but they are allowed to go for a whole week naked everywhere they go. So people are driving naked, they are
What?
in the parks naked, they are taking LRT naked, and I'm talking about full naked
Are
bodies.
they going to work? Can they go to work naked too? I
They
mean,
can go to work. Actually, there is a big story, and if someone that is watching this, you don't believe me, you can Google it up. There was a big story. I opposed that story, and I got lots of backlash for it, where the radio stations were broadcasting and taking pictures and videoing themselves for all to see naked. It was a big deal when the whole Canada was supposed to be naked in work and outside of work, wherever you could, strip yourself naked and show and stand in solidarity with the homosexual community. And the big deal right now is that they're not satisfied with just doing this. They are grooming and going after the children. So again, the sin is very progressive. It doesn't stop here. Sin doesn't know boundaries. When you allow a little bit of the opening, it will take over your entire life. And now you've got drag queen story hours, but they're not just reading to children. There is a big case with Derek Reimer, a friend of mine. He's a pastor here in the province of Alberta. He was arrested as a whistleblower because he exposed grooming of the children and pedophilia in the province of Alberta. So what did he do and why he was so upset? Because there is a royalty reading program paid by taxpayers, $100,000 per library all over the province of Alberta, where adults dressed as women, men dressed as women with beard and the whole 9 yards, are playing, are you ready? Dress up with little children and toddlers. So this is what is happening in Canada, and it's endorsed by the mainstream media, endorsed by the politicians. Actually, the politicians are defending grooming of the children and pedophilia. So one sin leads to another. When you get out of the biblical sexuality, because I agree with this guy if it comes to sex. Sex has been given to men as a blessing. It's a gift. And two will become one, the Bible says. So it's a gift to men, sex. But it has to be within the boundaries of God's instructions. What happens when you get out of God's instructions? You bring a curse upon yourself. And here is an interesting fact if it comes to sex outside of marriage. Every time you go to bed, either with men or with women, it doesn't matter. Part of that person's soul enters your soul, and part of your soul enters that person's soul. So if you slept with 100 people, you're walking with a baggage of many souls within your soul. You're fragmented because pieces of you are going with that individual you had sex with. Why am I telling you all those stuff? Because when you keep doing this the wrong way, the ungodly way, you will become depressed. That's why our society in Canada is a society that half of the adults, are you ready? Half of the adults are on antidepressants. Other half are hooked on illegal drugs and alcohol. We are talking about a disaster, a total disaster as a society. I just talked to my wife today and I said, look, they were telling us all those decades, the freedom is going to set them free. Tolerance is going to set them free. But when you tolerate sin, sooner or later, you will become slave of that sin. And Canadian society has become a slave to a sexual immorality. And if it comes to the pastors, and I will end with this, if it comes to the pastors, they have bought the idea of this tolerance because, like my wife says, they want to be holier than Jesus. They want to be more accepting than Jesus. They want to be more loving, more compassionate than Jesus. They have lost the saltiness. They have lost the spice that the church was supposed to have to separate the good from the bad, the good from the ugly. And because they are tolerating sin, they have become taken by that sin. So they very selectively, and here is my experience in Canada, very selectively pick and choose what suits their narration to the story. So they don't want to talk about sin. They don't want to talk about Romans. And I mean, I got tons of scriptures, of course, about sin. I mean, Leviticus, Jude, Timothy, Romans, Corinthians, Mark, Genesis, all kinds of scriptures that are telling us the boundaries. When you go outside of the boundaries, society is going to crumble. But why they're doing it, in my opinion, is more important for people to understand. They are accepting all of this because of money. Money. In Canada, Canadian churches are run by the board of directors, business people, and lawyers. And in the end of the day, it's all about money. The Canadian government threatened the churches that if they will not accept homosexual, perversion or transgenderism, they're going to lose their charitable tax status. And that's a big thing right now in Canada. I've lost our charitable tax status in 2008 because Canadian government sent me a letter, and they stated in a letter that because I speak negatively, are you ready? Negatively about abortion, divorce, and homosexuality. They actually cited in the letter in 2008 those three things. And they said, because I speak negatively about them, I am not eligible to have a charitable tax status. So in the end of the day, Canadian churches are looking at the threat that they're going to lose their funding, that they're going to lose their silver coin, and they have decided in a big scale to bow before the pressure of sexual perversion in order to keep the money flowing. If you really want to know why those pastors are playing the game and getting, along with sexual perversion, it is because in the end of the day, it's because of money. They don't want to lose the funding. They don't want to lose the people. They don't want to lose the charitable tax status. They want to keep going. Therefore, they are willing to compromise the biblical truth. When you start doing this, maybe at first is a calculated decision, but soon you will become taken over or demon possessed by those spirits. What you tolerate will overpower you in the future. So many of those people that did it for money, in my opinion, that's just my opinion, are demon possessed right now. And they are working not for Jesus, they are working for Satan himself. But it all is all connected, not just with sin of sexuality or perversion, but it's connected to money. The love of money in the West taken down the church, and instead of shining, we have become the darkness.